All right, the uproar over Will Smith slapping Chris Rock at Sunday's Academy Awards is only ramping up. Smith apologized to Rock in an Instagram post yesterday, but the comedian's brother, Tony Rock, says that Chris is still waiting to hear from Will Smith directly. Let's get some perspective of this whole situation from Dr. Drew Pinsky. He's the host of Dr. Drew After Dark, the Adam and Dr. Drew Show podcast, and the host of MTV's Teen Mom. He joins us now. Dr. Drew, look, there's a lot of things that could have caused all this, but one of the things that I wonder about, and I'm not trying to excuse any of this, but I keep wondering, these lockdowns, everybody kind of being sheltered, not being able to go out, interacting with each other. Do you think that could have played into any of this, that we've lost how to deal with each other just a little bit? And I'm not trying to excuse any of this by any means, by just...
Well, there's no doubt this has been stressing everybody out, and some people are at their wits' ends. Will has a lot of other stressors in his life. Where I'm reading now that people are saying he was not in great shape when he arrived at the ceremony. So it's always a lot more going on than what you see when there's just a behavior on television. The reality, though, is that during this pandemic, everything has been deconstructed. I mean, think about in this post-structuralist world, how many things have been deconstructed in the last 3 years, and how histrionic and hysterical people have become. We have now deconstructed so many things. I might just think about all the things that aren't connected to reality anymore, or the reality you thought you knew. But now even the basic relationship between a performer and an audience has broken down. The proscenium itself doesn't matter, doesn't exist. And the reality is also, childhood trauma is such a major issue in this time. I cannot emphasize enough how adverse childhood experiences in this country have been at pandemic levels for the last 30 years. And people who don't regulate well under stress are going to act out. And that's what we had here.
Dr. Drew, there's been a lot of conversation about how the crowd reacted to Will Smith's actions. Many people applauding, some people in shock. Do you think that it was weird that they weren't more supportive of the victim here, Chris Rock?
Well, absolutely. I mean, the fact that people, many people have registered their disgust at the crowd's behavior, but this is part of the behavior of the hour. Bill Maher himself just the other day said this was the mob action on Twitter that we're so unfortunately accustomed to seeing these days acted out in an audience setting. Once somebody goes, the mob looks around, what am I supposed to do? And they all go that direction, to the point where they're applauding somebody who was really not in good shape. My suspicion is, I mean, Will, when he wrote his book, went out on the campaign trail to sell the book, interviewing about how traumatic his childhood was, how violent it was. And my guess is that for some reason he was not doing well. We know their relationship is a bit cantankerous, that is Will Smith and his wife Jada. But for some reason, Chris triggered him. I bet he was in a blackout, not from drugs, a blackout that happens to people that have been exposed to violence in childhood when their rages are triggered.
I just think it's weird that you see somebody react that way, right? And we're seeing it, to your point, I think this is what you're alluding to. More and more people react violently these days when something happens. But to Lindsay's question, I think we've become numb to the reaction. Somebody lashes out, and instead of, I mean, before somebody would have gone, holy smokes, they've overreacted. Violence is never acceptable. Whereas here, everyone's like, wow, what was wrong with Will? And I can't believe nobody reacted and said, is Chris Rock okay? That to me should have been the immediate reaction. Is 100%. Chris Rock okay? As opposed to poor Will.
Yeah, 100%. And let's be clear, if I would expect if I behave like that whatever security there is in a building like that would take me away, not just to protect me from somebody else counterattacking, or me to protect others from me acting out further, but also the producers, the director, everyone has a liability here that if they don't take action, they're duplicitous in the whole thing. Now, they've got a very kind professional in Chris Rock who made sure the show went on in a way that was almost uncanny. I mean, that he was such ability to compose himself and figure out what to do in a very uncertain situation. All I can tell you is whatever was going on, there's really something not right, and it's much more than people know. It's always the case. Having treated many celebrities that have had strange behaviors in my day, when I go and actually evaluate and close the door and see what's going on, it's always a ton more than is reported in the press.
Right.
Dr. Drew, bring up Chris Rock, and he really had a class act response, which was amazing to see. I mean, he saved the night. But do you think that he should have actually responded differently? How should have he acted in that moment? Did he do the right thing to let people know that wasn't okay?
Yeah, he did. He did. Look, I'm not going to second guess anybody in that entire setup because it was so uncanny that the average viewer thought it was staged. That's how unbelievable it seemed. Like, this can't be happening. Believe me, Chris Rock felt the same way. Like, you have to figure out what's going on. Am I still in danger? What is my job in this moment? Do I take some sort of active action, or am I going to be attacked again? I mean, the very unclear situation. Now we know it worked out okay. He kept his composure. He kept the show going on. But look, there was all kinds of opportunity. Chris could have apologized for having gone too far with his what's being called ableist point of view. Perhaps it was too far, although Jada was talking earlier in the day about how she had no issues with her alopecia. And we still don't know what kind of alopecia this is. Is it alopecia areata, alopecia universalis, alopecia from traction, alopecia from hormone? I mean, what is this? Alopecia is like saying fever. So there's an opportunity here to talk more about this condition that does attack a lot of people and makes a lot of people very miserable. But we're not even going there. We're not even defining what it is that seemed to have upset her so much, because we're so busy trying to figure out what went on with Will Smith. All I can tell you is, when we look back at all this, my suspicion is this will just be another piece of symptoms that we look at and point at as how distressed we were during lockdowns, during the COVID epidemic, wearing masks. This has been an extremely destructive time. Dr. Fauci himself admitted that in an interview yesterday, that there, of course, were going to be unfortunate side effects of locking down. Those unfortunate side effects I'm seeing every day, and they are profound, particularly in the sort of 8 to 15-year-olds. We have nearly destroyed a generation if we don't do something aggressive to bring them back. That on top of already having a problem with childhood trauma and addiction in this country. So mental health is going to be a major, major issue going forward.
So let me just pick up on that for real quick. If it's that big of a problem, you're going to have this massive increase in demand for mental health services. Are there going to be enough counselors to meet that demand?
Most of the problems we're seeing don't require counselors. They require physicians, doctors, psychiatrists, and we do not have enough psychiatrists to do these evaluations. What's
the difference, though? How do I know? That's a good point, though. How do I know who to seek out then?
If you have, in an ideal world, if you have sufficient symptomatology from a mental health condition, you would first see a psychiatrist to get a diagnostic workup to make sure that there's not a medical problem, to make sure, get clear what the diagnosis is. Then get referred to the therapist. Much like if you had an orthopedic problem, you would see the orthopedist, and then he or she would send you to physical therapy or a trainer or to pain management, whatever it might be. But we don't have nearly enough physicians, nearly enough beds to handle this. Look at your streets. That's all mental health. That is predominantly a mental health crisis. And we have not only not created enough resources to treat these things, we have actually put laws in place to prevent us from doing the work we want to do. Now, there are lots of excellent professionals out there that are ready to work and ready to do this work, that are at a level of therapist or psychologist. And psychologists particularly can do just fine with diagnostic workups. But when you don't really know what you're dealing with, at least start with your primary doctor and let that physician determine that this is in fact a medical problem. It is a psychiatric problem, but you don't need any medical management. You can just go right to a psychologist or a therapist or an LCSW or an MFT. There are lots of people out there that are ready to help. And in today's world, we've gotten used to using Zoom and electronic media. I've sent many patients and family members into those therapeutic environments, and they've been very good.
Okay. A lot more to break down with you. Dr. Drew, thanks for sharing this insight with us. Super helpful right now.
Appreciate it.
You bet.
Hey guys, it's Rob Carson. Experts are warning the current 40-year inflation high will only get worse. See how to protect your IRA with gold. Get a free info kit like this one at birchgold.com/Newsmax. There's no cost. There's no obligation. Just get your free info kit at birchgold.com/Newsmax.